Deepwoken's Attunement. Each a note of the true power of the song, a force of nearly limitless power within the Deepwoken world that radiates throughout everything and everyone. People trained in attunements are generally weak to wield the song in its entirety, so with attunements they are a way for a person to specialize in one or even a few magic powers to strengthen those routes, since most people are incapable of using the song in its entirety. And real quick, I'm live on Twitch, you need to watch me on Twitch, I'm on Twitch, Twitch, watch my Twitch, I'm streaming on Twitch, I'm playing Devil May Cry 4, I'm playing all the Devil May Cry games, watch me on Twitch. Currently, there are 7 attunements in-game, being Frostdraw, Flame Charm, Gale Breath, Thundercall, Shadowcast, Iron Sing, and Bloodrend. As for the actual lore, there are many more attunements we don't currently have too much information about, such as the notorious Life Weave, an attunement based on the energy of living life itself, the Earth attunement, and many more. Contrary to popular belief, not all attunements have a drowned god. Specifically, man-made attunements do not have a drowned god under any circumstance, with the only attunements confirmed to have a drowned gods right now being Flame Charm, Gale Breath, Shadowcast, and maybe Thundercall and Ice, but those last two aren't 100% confirmed, only speculated based on developer statements. Attunements generally draw power out from around you. Gale Breath, for example, controls the wind around you and in your lungs. Frostdraw controls temperature and freezes both condensation and moisture in the air around you, as well as the air itself. Thundercall controls the energy and electrical fields in the space around you and within your body, and Flame Charm is unique in the fact that its main source of energy wasn't completely understood during the time of its conception, and still actually has some mysteries around it, but I'll cover more of that and the possibilities on how it works later. Two quick bits of lore, but Lightkeep isn't an attunement like some people believe it is, and water will never be an attunement. First of all, Lightkeeping, which is the unofficial but common name given to the magic used by Lightkeepers, is not an attunement. It's more akin to a regalia or a heavenly restriction, where you can't use an attunement, but in exchange you have access to what are known as the radiant tones of the song, which are light-based powers of the song that allow you to do special things like parting the void sea. As for water, it can't be an attunement, since the water in Deepwoken is a living force, which can only be controlled by the strongest beings in the universe. Now that you understand what an attunement is and how they work, let's get into the specifics, starting with Flame Charm. Flame Charm is the attunement with the most lore as well as the most mysteries brought on by that lore. Flame Charm was initially created during the golden era of the song known as the Cataclysm, like most attunements. However, it was never really controlled in the way most attunements were. While people could bend Gale Breath and wind to their will, most Flame Charm spells were crude applications which were mostly just large uncontrolled explosions and bursts of flame without real understanding of the attunement. In fact, we don't even know exactly how it's emitted and controlled right now. My personal theory is that you ignite the ether of your body and shoot it out in flames. This is because diethyl in real life, known as ether, enjoy my one correct pronunciation, is both flammable and combustible. So in combinations with high concentration of oxygen or heat, you could ignite it rather easily, and this would just be what Flame Charm is now. Regardless, despite Flame Charm being mostly crude, it wouldn't remain that way forever. When Amoris Pleatsky would dive down into layer 3 of the depths, he would eat the lava flower, a piece of the drowned god coral fiend of Flame Charm. In doing this, he would ascend to become the Deepwoken of the Flame Attunement, and he would gain a new understanding of the fire around him, capable of commanding it and speaking with it. After he gained this new innate knowledge, he spread that knowledge among the overworld and taught people how to truly command the flames that they had cast, and actually make Flame Charm the attunement a whole, which it never was before. He then went back down to layer 3 and has been there pretty much ever since. Flame Charm was probably initially discovered within the Western Luminant, as the Covenant of Flame and Pleatsky both hail from the Western Luminant. Some people consider it that the official lore, but it's not confirmed despite being very implied, but I do think it is true. Next is Gale Breath, which actually doesn't seem to have a conception during the Cataclysm like many attunements did. Now, it probably did, but we don't actually know exactly when Gale Breath was conceived, because the place where it came from is probably just, you know, the Etrian Luminant, which could be like anywhere. But the fact that Etheron exists does imply it is a natural attunement existing within the song for a long time, so it's most likely had been conceived during the Cataclysm, even if it isn't completely confirmed. Very likely though. Gale Breath power comes from controlling the air around you and the air in your lungs. Suffocation, for example, as an effect, stops the air from entering the lungs of the affected person, choking them and preventing them from properly gathering ether, which is in the air around you. Which also implies that Deepwoken's air is a different compound than our air in real life, because Deepwoken's air has diethyl ether in it, along with oxygen and what I'm assuming are argon, neon, and carbon dioxide, and other trace gases. Regardless, not too much is known on Gale Breath other than its drowned god is Etheron within layer 2 and how it works. The conception is pretty foggy as a whole, but the attunement is pretty simple. It's probably an attunement which came from the Etrian Luminant, as it is currently the most popular there, and it's used by the Etris people and its guards. Next up is Frostdraw. Frostdraw is more so the controlling of temperature than just ice or frost alone. The way it works is by rapidly freezing the air around you, which is why the ice from Frostdraw is more so dry ice made of carbon dioxide than actual water-based ice most people are used to in real life. Frostdraw likely came during or before the Cataclysm in the golden age of the song, and Frostdraw is generally considered native to the southern Luminant, as the children of Neve use it naturally, and they're supposed to hail from the forested southern Luminant before it was destroyed and they became nomads. It is quite strange though, considering the fact that they wouldn't really have reason to control ice in low temperatures while living in the equivalent of a modern North American forest, but I guess the song manifests quite randomly within people before its techniques are passed down and taught to people. So it really could have been any attunement. Next up, and finally of the main 4 attunements that the game started with, is going to be Thundercall. Thundercall works by taking energy and converting it into electricity. This can be done in a lot of ways. Kinetic energy from movement produces energy, magnetic fields and energy fields in the world around you have energy which can be taken from, which is generally what Thundercall probably does, and basically any form of energy can be converted into electricity, potentially even including solar radiation and energy which could be converted into the electricity used in Thundercall. As for the lore, there's not a whole lot going on with Thundercall. The attunement has no known drowned god, but seeing how it's generally naturalistic, it's possible that it does have one and emerged before or during the Cataclysm. The attunement itself has strong ties to the central authority, even having a talent tree named after them with the authority interrogation talents, which also implies that they don't use Thundercall for torture, but rather some sort of weird form of mind reading or mind control on hostages. There are also vague hints of lore like what is known about the God Storm, but there's really nothing on that. Ferryman also doesn't seem to have any important ties to it either, other than just liking the attunement and being tied to it because he's the only person with a purple attunement signifying mastery. It's also hypothesized that it was taught to people by the Lightborns who came down to the overworld during the Cataclysm, which could make a lot of sense assuming that the Heavenly Kingdom at the Moon's Eyrie has a lot of sun, so maybe they were converting that solar energy into electricity. But as far as confirmed lore goes, there is very little other than how you make the lightning. Onto our first man-made attunement, being Iron Sing. Iron Sing is an attunement which utilizes the iron in your blood to construct metal objects out of thin air, kind of like the stand Metallica from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Part 5. There's going to be another JoJo reference later. This also means that Iron Sing may cause anemia and iron deficiency in its users, which is funny to think about. Iron Sing was believed to be invented and created by the Hivekin during the golden age of the song. This is implied by the Hive Tactician outfit being created by the Iron Sing. They, however, wanted to gatekeep the Iron Sing attunement for themselves, so they could remain the most technologically dominant power in the overworld. Because of this, they began killing any natural-born Iron Singers in hopes of keeping the attunement out of other factions' hands. However, Adar, the Iron Singer attunement trainer, is an exception to this, being a natural-born Iron Singer currently kept in the Ignition Union's protection, as he is a very valuable asset for them for technological advancements, making Adar and potentially the player the only 2 Iron Singers outside of the Hive's isolationist society. Next up is Shadowcast. Shadowcast actually isn't a man-made attunement some people think it is. It is not. It was not made by the Ministry, and that is confirmed for, they have a drowned god. The reason why we know this is because the first prophet of the Ministry is the ascended Deepwoken of Shadowcast, meaning Shadow has to have a drowned god and a lair somewhere deep in the depths where the first prophet probably resides, similarly to Amoris Pleatsky. We don't have any real known information on the Shadowcast drowned god though, we just know he exists because in order for a Deepwoken of an attunement to exist, a drowned god must exist. Shadowcast, unlike most naturalist attunements, doesn't take energy from what's around you. While most of their attunements gather energy and command what's around you, Shadowcast energy comes from the negative emotions and feelings of darkness within people. To channel Shadowcast, you need to embrace your inner darkness and be able to control it and expel it out of your body. This implies that Shadowcast is the one attunement in-game that not just anybody can attain and control, as it requires strong negative thought and emotion to use. Shadowcast is heavily used by the Ministry and associated with them, to the point where it's seen as a taboo magic in society. So Shadowcast users, and especially natural-born Shadowcast users, who are probably dark people by nature, are shunned from most societies outside of the Ministry, which is also why most people don't use it or bother to learn it. Its magic siphons the ether and energy from those hit by it, and it's just evil black magic that people don't like. Next up is the second man-made attunement currently in the game, Bloodrend. Believed to be made by the second prophet of the Ministry, Bloodrend uses the blood within your body as well as its necessary structures and organs such as the veins for various usages. Bloodrend can be used for combat and mobility as well as surgery, healing, blood transfusions, blood clotting forcefully, it's actually really useful when you go into how it works. However, most Blood Rend users are under oath by the Second Prophet, who does not allow them to do good with their abilities. The Chaser, for example, served under the Second Prophet before invading the Divers, and he is under that oath, which doesn't allow him to teach the attunement to anyone or use it for anything positive to anyone outside of the ministry. The Chaser is, however, under a modified oath to the Second Prophet, so the bells on the Chaser's hip, for example, are effigies of dead people who he takes energy and power from. So his usage of the bell his usage of the oath of Blood Rend is a little bit less restricted. But Virelda, the Blood Trainer, was able to convince the Second Prophet she had a similar ability to Chaser, and was able to get out of her oath and learn the Blood Attunement before leaving the ministry, at which point she pretty much has no restrictions. Because similarly to Dawnwalker being like, you know, light magic that's adjusted for combat, that's pretty much what most Blood Rend users are under. They're under an oath, kind of like Dawnwalker. However, it does exist as an attunement, which is what you get from Virelda, which, good, because the devs actually planned on making it an oath initially, and they'd probably add like the Second Prophet into the game, which could have been cool, but I'm really happy that they added another attunement instead of an oath. That would have been kind of lame. Now that I've covered every attunement in the game, let's go over some that aren't. First up is Lifeweave. Lifeweave attunement, similarly to Iron Sing, is currently being gatekept by the Hivekin. Lifeweave uses the energy encompassing life for various usages, but the most well-known and, you know, the powers being used by them are the Hive Mechs, which shoot big plasma lasers made from life energy, as well as just accelerating and springing life from nothing, making trees and stuff with their attacks, JoJo reference, as well as the flying Hive Mechs that shoot plasma lasers that just aren't in the game but have been mentioned by Yayafino. A rather popular story involving Lifeweave, which shows some more of its capabilities, is about a Felinor who lived with the Hive. This Felinor was a pyromaniac and loved to set things on fire. He kept setting their trees on fire. In response, the Hive higher-ups presumably used Lifeweave to create a new genetic strand of fireproof trees, which is now what the entirety of Hive uses for trees and lives inside of. Meaning that along with just, you know, causing outbursts of life like Gold Experience does in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5, my favorite one, they're also capable of gene splicing and creating entirely new types of life using Lifeweave, which is extremely powerful. It'll also most likely be the next attunement to make it into the game, if any. As for the final actual attunement, covered before attunement lists, is the unnamed Earth attunement, maybe Earthbound, like the video game. Anyway, the attunement has one statement made on it by Archmage, and that he doesn't want it to be similar to the current Ice and Frost draw, so he'd probably make it based on like Earth's oils and poisonous substances rather than just rocks. So we could get an oil attunement, but if that happens, then America has more reasons to solo the Deepwoken verse, so maybe we don't want that. Yes, the United States of America military does solo the Deepwoken verse. I made 3 videos on this topic. If you disagree with me, you're just wrong. Now finally, we are at attunement lists, which is not the lack of magic abilities, but just a change in the way that you use them. While most attunements use ether to control and channel various elements, an attunementless user uses the ether within their body to strengthen the body, making you stronger and more durable. In this case, ether is kind of like certain someone's nanomachines, straightening and strengthening the mind and body, using the song as a force for strength rather than to wield magic. Attunementless users generally just get better at fighting and wielding weapons, but basically all aspects of your body are kind of strengthened, like a heavenly restriction. In lore, attunementless users are stronger, faster, but it's not just your physical body that performs better, your mind and senses are sharper, and your reaction speed is increased, stuff like that. You're just a peak human if you're playing without an attunement, which is actually just really cool. And finally, allow me to cover Silent Heart, which is basically the anti-attunement oath. The way it works is by pretty much replacing your heart, which the heart takes in notes of the song with every beat, but then you replace your heart with a silent heart that blocks out certain notes of the song, not allowing you to channel ether for the usage in the form of mantras. So you can still get bells and stuff, you can use that part of the song, but you're blocking out the part of the song responsible for attunement and mantra usage. Anyway, that's all of the lore encompassing Deepwoken's attunements, I guess, and Silent Heart. If you guys want me to cover other stuff, let me know what it is. I'll make another lore video. Maybe I could do factions. You guys want to see factions? I kind of covered some of that in the Luminance video, but I didn't go super deep into factions, so I can cover like everything with all the factions. Hope you all enjoyed. Shoutouts to Pickle, Brick, Green, Goopka, High Card, and Drizzy Drake Fan. I love you all. Watch me on Twitch, and goodbye.